We interrupt this record to bring you a special bulletin. The reports of a flying saucer hovering over the city have been confirmed.
Did you really go out with an alien? Uh-huh. What was it like? Real different.
Becoming Human, a Mork and Mindy podcast. Hello, listeners. This is Paula Schaffner with episode 56. Alas, poor Mork, we knew him well, which is a reference to Alas, poor Yorick, I knew him Horatio from Hamlet. This episode first aired on January 8th, 1981. The IMDb synopsis is, Mork becomes so paranoid about natural disasters that he locks himself inside a glass bubble. This was the 44th episode, directed by Howard Storm. It was the middle of 3, written by the team of Steve Kreinberg and Andrew Gerdott. There's a sunny exterior of the house.
Finally, the crew of the Calypso and myself, these boys have been at sea for a long time. We're finally looking for the great white in dangerous waters. They say this is the black hole, the deep trench. We don't know why we are here, but they pay us, we go anyway. It is a very dangerous search, so I sent Falco down, my assistant. No, please, Jack, no! Quiet, Falco, when you have your own specials, you can give me stuff. But please, no, please, Jack.
No, basta go down.
Yes, you must go down there now.
No, please, no.
What do you see down there, Falco? What does it look like? What do you think? All right, now, Falco, what do you see? We'll send down the jive sucker to help you with the search. Hold on there. At last we have found him. Eric Estrada standing. Yes, there you are, the great Jaws himself. Yes. Oh, I'll get it. No, you want to get it? Shh. It's all right? Good.
We have Mork alternating two of his standard impressions, Jacques Cousteau and Senor Wences. We get the first of a couple references to a black hole. There's a moment where you can see Robin Williams almost break character when he's alternating covering his mouth and not, but he does hold it together. There's a reference to Eric Estrada's teeth, because the chip star had a very memorable big smile. And there's a reference to Jaws. Mork goes to the door. He opens it to a young blonde man who's in a brown suit, a brown tie. He has a brown cowboy hat. And I think that's meant to give him kind of a Colorado feel, and I think that's also what his accent is supposed to be. We'll soon find out that this is an insurance salesman, but it's supposed to be a bolder version of an insurance salesman. He's also carrying a tan suitcase. The man says howdy a few times, and then he introduces himself as Ernest Travers, insurance salesman. He hangs up his hat and shakes Mork's hand. Mork says he has good hands. It turns out to be a very long handshake. Mork asks him about his fire hat and his old moose, and I didn't get that reference. The only thing I could think of was Captain Kangaroo. Mork says his name is Mork, so Ernest calls him Mr. Mork. He puts his arm around Mork's shoulders and walks him down to the living room. He says it's Mr. Mork's lucky day. Mork asks Porqué for the first of a few times in this episode. Mork wonders if it's because David Brenner isn't hosting the Tonight Show tonight. And that's a reference not only to Johnny Carson having guest hosts, which has come up before, but although we wouldn't have known that at the time, David Brenner apparently got very angry with Robin Williams and claimed that he stole his jokes. I think that there was probably some animosity between them by 1980. Ernest says it's even better and calls him Buddy. They sit on the couch, and Ernest sets his suitcase on the wicker chest. He opens it up and says he's talking about protection.
Oh, I know about protection.
Yo, Mr. Mork, you have a choice. You can either learn to dance or talk slowly.
So when Mork hears the word protection, he thinks of the mob. Ernest says that Mork can get $100 a day, and all he has to do is get seriously injured. Mork looks upset by this, of course. Ernest says, do you realize that 1 out of 4 people gets hospitalized every year? And I couldn't help thinking that Mindy has already had her turn last year.
Oh, well, what is this, some kind of setup for a sick joke?
No. Friend, it's perfectly true. Why, 7 people have gotten sick just as I've been talking to you.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no. Oh, we should be talking in sign language.
Oh, sir. And that's not all.
Oh, no.
Why, there are over 4 million automobile accidents every year. Oh. Not to mention fires and earthquakes and twisters.
Oh, no.
Why, a big old twister of 47 screwed my granny right into the ground.
Oh, no. Mondo Irwin Allen.
But But, son, you will be protected with our coverage for just a few measly pennies a day.
Oh, who cares? Where do I sign? Where do I sign?
Right here, buddy.
Oh, thank you.
Right there.
Right there.
You got it. Right there.
We can see here how manipulative Ernest is and how Mork becomes very fearful. And there's a reference to Irwin Allen, who was famous for making disaster movies. I like that there was so much audience appreciation of Mindy when she came in, and it kind of builds, and we get a nice hug between Mork and Mindy. Ernest keeps trying to get Mork to sign the form, and he calls him Buddy again. He tells Mindy that he's Honest Ernest Travers, Pikes Peak Calamity and Auto. So that's the name of his insurance company. He says it's nice to meet her. He again tries to get Mork to sign. Mindy pulls the form away from Mork and says he should never sign anything before he reads it. Mork says he might go belly up between the O and the R of M-O-R-K. He tries to sign. She pulls the form away again and tells him she doesn't really think he can afford insurance. He says it only costs a few measly pennies, the ones with President Measly on them. Couldn't think of any president that had a name like Measly, so it's just kind of a random joke. He tries to sign again, and she again pulls the form away. She asks how many measly pennies. Ernest says, "Now, madam, you cannot put a price tag on coverage like this." She insists on knowing how much. He says it's about $300 a month, and it would protect Mork from any disaster. He again tries to get Mork to sign. Mork says he has to have this in case Meatloaf falls on him. He doesn't want to end up as Hamburger Helper. Of course, that's a reference to the hefty rock musician. Ernest briefly puts his hand on Mork's shoulder and tells Mork to trust him. Mork's health and welfare is their only concern, meaning the insurance companies. Mindy very clearly says that Mork doesn't have any money. Ernest says thank you very much and goodbye. He grabs the form from Mindy. Mork angrily says that Ernest can't just leave after scaring the heebie-jeebies out of him. Ernest says bye-bye and leaves. Mork can't believe it. Then Ernest returns briefly to grab the pen. As a Native American, Mork says, "White man come, take Bic," referring to a Bic pen. Already a few product jokes. Mork thinks he needed that protection. He doesn't understand why Mindy wouldn't let him get it. Mindy says on Earth, salesmen aren't always ethical. A point that Mork should have learned by now. Besides, it sounds like Ernest was using scare tactics to talk Mork into something he doesn't need. He says they worked. He thinks there might be something lurking outside the door. She says nothing is lurking outside that wasn't there last night. He tries to scare her by saying something is behind her, but she doesn't turn around. He realizes that she didn't fall for it. They go over to the couch. She wants to make a checklist for their trip. She says that Mork is going to love Yellowstone this time of year. It's so pretty. He realizes that this time of year is winter. And I just want to mention all the exteriors are sunny. There's no sign of snow, but this had an air date in January, and it is officially winter now. He worries that people freeze their chlorns off in winter, and I think that's the first time we've had the word chlorns. She says they're going to be staying in a nice warm lodge. He's relieved until he wonders if the lodge could get real warm if it burned down. She says it's not going to burn down. He wonders what would happen if some big butch Boy Scout rubbed two rooms together. She says they've been planning this trip for weeks now. So I don't know how much time has passed since the previous episode. It's the first time this trip has come up on screen. She says, "You don't want to disappoint Nelson and Glenda, do you?" He says, "Maybe." She says that salesman made him paranoid, and in a kind of paranoid way. He says, "Why do you say that?" She says if he thinks about logically, what could possibly happen to him? He tries to be logical, but then he realizes that he's cute and cuddly. What if one of those big grizzly bears decides to take a little Morky doll to bed? And yes, there were Mork dolls by then. Bears sleep all winter. What happens in the springtime? He doesn't want to wake up as Smokey's fiancé. So yes, another bestiality joke. He curls up on the couch and buries his head on her lap. Then there's a sunny daytime exterior of the Da Vinci's restaurant. A man in a cowboy hat and a woman in a poncho are going in as three other people come out. Jeannie exits the kitchen with 2 plates. Remo goes into the kitchen. She goes over to Mr. Bickley's table. He's got his hat on the table and he's reading the newspaper. She asks Mr. Bickley where Mork is, since she's got their lunch. He says Mork is calling the weather service in Yokohama. He wanted to see if a tidal wave was headed for Boulder, and of course Colorado is not coastal. She sarcastically says that's great. She asks what Mork is afraid of. Bickley shrugs and says modern living. Mork appears kind of in the middle of the restaurant, and I couldn't tell from where because I thought that the phone booth was right outside the front door, as we established in the episode where he calls to find out the movie times. Remo asks if he's alright, compared to his normal level of strangeness. Mork says he doesn't know. The day's but a fetus, so more of Mork doing the fetus, meaning young or early. Mork says he almost met Mr. Reaper, and it was really grim, like the Grim Reaper. He was outside making a phone call, and a block away, a van swerved and hit a wall. Remo asks what that has to do with Mork. Mork says a month ago he was at that exact same spot. If it wasn't for December, he'd be decomposing now, just like Mozart. If I haven't heard the decomposing joke before on Mork Mindy, I have certainly heard it elsewhere. And also that does suggest that it is now January because December intervened and helped him avoid that accident.
You understand, don't you?
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah. Wait, oh, it's everywhere. Shh, I'm okay. Wait, no. Oh, I feel safe here, I do, I really do.
Remo understandably doesn't know how to react. I thought it was kind of sweet that Mork feels safe with Mr. Bickley. But Mr. Bickley doesn't know why Mork feels safe with him because he's not safe anywhere. Look at how we're polluting the air. A guy he knows shot a duck last year and it took 3 days to hit the ground. That poor dog slipped a disc waiting for the sucker to fall, and then he imitates a dog pointing at the game. Mork says he'd better stop breathing. Mr. Bickley says he might as well stop eating too, because there's always some health faddist claiming food has stuff in it that's dangerous. And ironically, he finally gets to eat a bite of his sandwich after that line. Mork says, oh no wonder they say a prayer before every meal. Mr. Bickley says even this plate could be coated with toxic lead-based paint.
Wait a minute. Everybody, hit the deck! This plate's about to go off! Watch out, fierce, 12 o'clock!
Hey! That plate cost me 5 pesos.
Oh, perdón, mi culpa.
Of course, we're civilized, men. Besides, there's no place to hide. The world as we know it is coming to an end. And me without a check.
Exeter!
Mork! Is that you? Ah, a minute. Boys, while we chat, go loot the bathroom.
Exeter, did you say the world was coming to an end?
No, I said that. True. I was just struck by this meteor from the Melmac galaxy.
Do you believe this guy?
Well, I've seen chameleons with a better grasp on reality.
The cynics will be fossils in 2 hours. The world will be over at 4 o'clock. 3 o'clock Central Time.
Oh, I'm gonna miss you, you big loon.
Oh, Mork, you're my dearest three-dimensional friend. Let's do something that'll make this moment last an eternity.
Well, forget an eternity. What about the next 10 seconds?
Well, we could say adios, compadre.
So we get more of Mork speaking Spanish, and there's a lot of audience reaction to Exeter, of course. I wondered if Exeter was actually going to be gone for a month. It's only been 2 episodes, but clearly at least a month has passed since then. We get confirmation that Ambrosia is definitely out of the picture because of the line, me without a chick. Whatever happened in the relationship, he is no longer married. I did wonder what Exeter's followers would be looting in the restroom, but maybe they're stocking up on toilet paper. You can see in this scene that Remo, Jeannie, and Bickley are all very much done with Exeter, understandably. I thought it was very interesting that Exeter refers to a meteor from the Melmac galaxy because that was a planet that was part of the lore of Alf later on, and Alf would make a couple Mork Mindy references in its turn, so I'm pretty sure they stole that from this episode. It must currently be 2 p.m. because the world is scheduled to end in a couple hours at 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock Central Time. That little Central Time joke got to me because that was part of being a TV viewer at that time. I thought it was very sweet and characteristic of Exeter that Mork is his dearest three-dimensional friend. It feels like there was some kind of edit between the adios compadre line and Mr. Bickley's next reaction. There's another moment like that in this episode. Things feel a little bit off in the editing, either from how it originally aired or how it ended up on DVD. There's another sunny exterior of the house. Mork in voiceover says they've got everything they need right here. Then we see that he's got a shopping cart by the dining table. Mindy thinks he's a little overprepared for a simple trip to Yellowstone. And it's never explained how long they're going to Yellowstone. He says, what trip? He's staying here. She asks what all this stuff is for. He says he's prepared for any calamity imaginable. He's got snake repellent, shark repellent, and he says ick 3 times. A foghorn, mosquito nets, highway flares, and when she tries to interrupt, he says, "Don't stop me, I'm on a roll." He's got a pen light in case they fall into a black hole. He quickly demonstrates that. And he's got handy wipes in case they get attacked by a flock of fried chicken. She says there's almost no chance they'll fall into a black hole, and a 50-50 chance they'll be attacked by fried chicken. He says he's prepared for regular calamities too. Your famine, your pestilence, your fire. She says he forgot the ever-popular flood. He says, "You thought you had me there, didn't you, Princess Hokum?" No way. He's prepared for that too. He takes on life raft and inflates it. He puts on the floor and steps in. He says it's Morko's Noah's Ark, and he laughs triumphantly. He says their good animals are outside, 2 by 2. They're all auditioning, bringing little 5 by 4s, glossy photos. And then he says, "Hello, I'm Carl. I'm a squirrel. This is my wife, Lola." And the audience is amused. Carl was a name that kept coming up in season 1, and of course now we know a little girl named Lola on the show. He doesn't really do a squirrel voice. He just says that that's who he is. Mindy smiles a little but shakes her head. She's going to ignore all this. She's going to the store to buy hiking boots. I would have thought that Mindy, being such an outdoors person, would have already had hiking boots, but maybe she's buying them for Mork. I don't know. She insists that he is coming with her on that trip. He's overlooked one vital statistic. More accidents occur in the home than any place else. So he should think about how much safer he'll be with her in Yellowstone. She grabs her coat and purse. And sounding a bit like Mr. Bickley, she says, "Ha ha ha," which he imitates after she leaves. He says he's not safe out there. He's not safe in here. He's not safe anywhere. And sort of like a baby, he says he wants his test tube instead of his mommy. There's a nighttime exterior of the house. Mindy enters saying she got hiking boots. She asks what the lights are out for. Mork says he couldn't reach the switch. She doesn't understand.
It's a survival condo, man. I finally found a place where I'm safe. I'm never coming out.
This is ridiculous.
No, Min. It's a hermetically sealed, germ-free, antiseptic life support unit. It's kind of like a womb with a view.
He does have a lamp in there, but maybe it's not plugged in, or maybe he just wanted the dramatic effect of the reveal. I noticed that he has a TV in there, so that will help keep him company. He has a change of clothes with his other usual shirt, the orange and black one. I did wonder, what does he do about a bathroom? But of course it's not addressed, and we still don't know that aspect of work and life yet, and probably never will. The womb with a view joke, I'm pretty sure he's used once or twice before. There's another nighttime exterior of the house. It's pretty much where we left off. Mindy now has her hands on her hips. He asks how she likes it. He says he got the plans from Better Homes and Shelters. He thinks it's wonderful. He tells her she can go on with her life as usual, just don't peek in here when he's in his undies, and then he mimes modestly covering himself. She asks where he would ever get a crazy idea like this. He says it's not crazy. They used this on Ork during the famous swine flu epidemic. It kept pigs from bouncing on them. That's why their noses are so flat, and then he demonstrates that with his finger. She tells him he can't stay in there forever. He says "Poor Kay" again, and he again says it's wonderful in there. He's finally found a place where he's safe. Nothing can harm him. It gives him 24-hour protection, and it doesn't even stain his clothes, which I think is a reference to an antiperspirant ad. He sits. She can't believe he's just going to withdraw from the world. He says she's got it. She says he's going to hide in his little shell, trembling with fear at anything that could possibly hurt him. He doesn't understand, says that he can tell her where she can get one of her own. She says he's going to have to come out there sooner or later. He says he's got enough provisions in here for 9 or 10 bleems. And again, I don't think a bleem is 2,000 years anymore. I mean, he doesn't seem to have that many provisions. I don't think it would even be enough for 9 or 10 days. He's got canned water. He says it's incredible. You open it up and there's water inside. He says there's room for 2 in here. He tells her she can come in and finally be safe. She says she's out here and she's all right. She says everybody's exposed to these things that he's afraid of. He says we'll see who's laughing 100 years from now. When everybody's going, and then as an old man he says, "Help me." He'll be going, "Ha ha, I'm young." She says, "Don't you see what's happening to you?" He says, "Yes, he's protected." She says he's paranoid. And then they keep bouncing adjectives at each other. Invulnerable, untouchable, safe, alone. And then he says he's afraid. She says she's afraid too. Afraid for him.
Well, we've still got each other, huh? I guess something's finally come between us, huh? Big kiss.
go into this more, but some of this episode is actually about their relationship. In here we see something has literally come between them, and we get a spin on the big kiss thing of season 3. There's a close-up of the Da Vinci's restaurant sign. Then we zoom out to a different angle from before. We see a woman exit. There are 2 VW bugs in the shot, an orange and a yellow one. A really neat sign of the times. And I noticed that the street sign says Walnut. And there is a Walnut Street that runs through downtown Boulder. And we can also see a mountain in the background. So I think they might have done this on location, or at least researched it. We can see yellow and orange leaves in a nearby tree, and so I had the feeling this was shot in the fall. It definitely does not look like January. Nelson and Glenda are sitting on the same side of the table. Jeannie, in a different outfit from before, asks if they're still planning on going to Yellowstone tomorrow. So I don't know how much time has passed, but we're now at the day before the planned trip. She sits down with a coffee cup, which apparently is for herself. Glenda says yes, it's tomorrow. And we find out that that's why Nelson bought a bright orange jacket. He says with his complexion, he doesn't want anybody confusing him with a snowman. We had the thing last season where Mork would call him an albino and make fun of his paleness and blondness, and so now he's doing it himself. Nelson has sort of developed a sense of humor this season. Not a lot, but definitely more than in season 2. He says it's gotta hurt when they jam that carrot in your face. Glenda and Jeannie laugh. Jeannie really wishes she was going, but she can't get off work and she's got to study for an anatomy class. And I appreciate that there was a reference to her being in med school. Nelson says aw in disappointment. Glenda says, speaking of anatomy, Mindy says Glenda shouldn't bring her bikini. She asks, what do you think? She's clearly asking Jeannie, but Nelson takes her hand and says, wear it, Glenda, please. And he tells her that bikinis are very big this time of year in Yellowstone. Jeannie says, Nelson Flavor, you're a sexist. He thanks her. And we knew from last season that Nelson was sexist, of course. Glenda doesn't seem to mind, and she laughs. Jeannie says, are you really going to go to Yellowstone with this guy? They both nod. Then she says, wait a minute. Are you 2 guys becoming an item here, or what?
Yes. No.
So if there are any Glosson or Ninda shippers out there, this is probably a confusing episode for you. Remo opens the kitchen door and tells Jeannie that the freezer motor is broken again. He wants her to please fix it, and she needs to hurry. The clams are starting to open. He goes back in the kitchen. Jeannie says a woman's work is never done. Clearly she is a feminist, and that has always been implied, but it's made a little more clear in this scene. She picks up her coffee cup and exits to the kitchen. Nelson tells Glenda he was just kidding about the bikini. He wouldn't want her to catch a cold. A one-piece swimsuit would be fine. And I noticed that they were holding hands again. Mindy enters and goes over to them. They all say hi. Nelson asks if Mork changed his mind about the trip, or is he still holed up in his humidor? She says yes, and they're happy, but then she explains that she means yes, the last part. They both groan in disappointment. Mindy doesn't think Mork is ever coming out. He just sits in there, sipping his tang, so referring to the drink that the astronauts drank. Glenda says it is a little strange. If she were Mindy, she'd look upon him as a big guppy and just be grateful she doesn't have to clean that tank. Mindy feels like she's already spoiling the trip. Nelson agrees and says that the trip is wrecked. And I thought that was cute, a cousin teasing her. We saw her teasing him in season 2, so that's another example of him lightening up. She says maybe they should make plans without her and Mork. Glenda says they haven't given up yet, because she's usually the optimist. But they have to think of something. Mindy says she's tried everything. She's begged, pleaded, and used logic. Nelson says logic will never work. I didn't know if that was like a comment on him being an ex-politician or what. And I also was thinking about in this episode, it used to be that Mork presented himself as this superior being who was very logical and unemotional, and obviously that has changed over time, and we have definitely seen him be irrational, and not just in this episode. Glenda says maybe Mindy is paying too much attention to Mork. Mindy agrees. If he wants isolation, she'll give him isolation. Nelson says they'll all give him isolation. Mindy has a great idea. She wants them to come over tonight around 8 o'clock. They just might be able to find a way to get Mork out of that glass box. They just have to fight bizarre with bizarre. Nelson says if that doesn't work, they could get Ella Fitzgerald to come over and hit a high note. Glenda and Mindy laugh. Mindy drinks her coffee. That's a reference to the Memorex commercials where singer Ella Fitzgerald would hit a high note. Is it live or is it Memorex? There's another nighttime exterior of the house. The bell rings. Mork is now in his black and orange shirt, and we can see his multicolored shirt hanging up. He asks Mindy if she's expecting company, and he offers to get it. He bangs his head on the glass. He says it's so clear he didn't know it was there. Mindy greets Nelson and Glenda. Glenda is in her black pantsuit. Nelson is in a suit with a dark jacket. Mork calls out to them and says if he knew they were coming, he would have squeegeed his face. Nelson says this is a great idea, a going-away party from work. Mork says, a party for me? He hopes there's a pony ride. Mindy says actually it's a gone-away party. Glenda says gone, yes, but not forgotten. Nelson says it's too bad that Mork had to go. He was so much fun at parties. And I couldn't help thinking of the two parties that I remember. Nelson had a campaign party, which Mork ruined by becoming his version of Mindy. And of course, the bachelor party for Exeter that Nelson was shocked and disgusted by.
Hey, wait a minute, I'm still here. I'm still fun at parties. Watch. What's this? Hey, oh, what's this?
It again felt like there was something that got edited out, and I noticed that the runtime on this episode is about 30 to 60 seconds shorter than some of the others. Mindy says they should get this party started. She offers them punch. The bell rings again. Mork again bangs his head trying to answer it, and he says shot spot. Mindy lets in Mr. Bickley, who's also in a suit and tie. He says he's sorry he's late. He was going to bring some forget-me-nots, but he got a break on this. He holds up a wreath with an R.I.P. ribbon on it. He says the fella it was for pulled through. Mindy thanks him. She's sure Mork would have appreciated it. She sets it against the glass box. Mork says that he's still here. He tries to get their attention, including doing some sort of weird semaphores. Bickley says it's so quiet here without him. Mindy says it took some getting used to, but life does go on. Glenda Faye brings over the punch, and Nelson brings the hors d'oeuvres. They all take the punch. Nelson sets down the hors d'oeuvres. Mindy and Mr. Bickley sit on the couch. Nelson and Glenda keep standing. Nelson says good old Mork. He's sure gonna miss that little tyke, like Mork as a child, although he admits that Mork was strange.
But that was his charm. I'm gonna miss his laugh. That certain R. I'm gonna miss the way he wore his suspenders, the way he wore his hat.
Oh, what hat?
The way he sang off key.
That's it.
The memory of all that. No, they can't take that away from me. Cheers.
So Nelson is referring to the song They Can't Take That Away From Me, which was performed by, among other people, Ella Fitzgerald. We get some nice reactions from Robin Williams, like when he says, what hat? He doesn't realize that Nelson is quoting the lyrics. Mork says if Rod Serling walks in the door, he's going to hatch a brick. So, of course, referring to the Twilight Zone host, and I'm assuming that there was a cruder verb than hatch that went with brick. Glenda Faye says she didn't know Mork as long as the rest of them, but she does have one real regret. She just wishes that he wouldn't have gone away before she found out what Shazbot, as she pronounces it, means. He tells her that if she'll just talk to him, he'll tell her. He'll even tell her what chlorins are. Mindy asks if Mr. Bickley had something he wanted to say. He says funny she should mention it. He gets to his feet and goes over to stand next to the glass box. He just happens to have a little gem here from Mork's favorite greeting card writer, him.
An ode to Mork. To my friend, I say, bon voyage. I can offer but this verbal corsage. I loved his eyes, I loved his nose, but now I hope I get his clothes.
That was so wonderful. I'm beginning to miss myself. You know, wait a minute, I'm still here. Come on, man, joke's over. Come on.
There's something I'd like to say. The Mork we all knew and loved is no longer with us. Oh, he was so full of life. I remember one time when I asked him to change a 100-watt bulb. He ran to the corner and brought back 2 25s and a 50. He used to spend hours trying to teach a tub of margarine how to say butter. He was the only guy I knew who would really give you a penny for your thoughts. Oh, he was so special.
Oh, Min. Wait a minute. Min, I'm still alive. I'm alive. I'm right here.
Are you, Mork? People who are alive don't shut themselves off from the world. You're not protecting yourself from harm. You're closing yourself off from everything that makes life worth living. I'm gonna miss you, Mork. Goodbye.
Oh, I already miss you. I don't want to give up on life. Yeah, I want to live again.
So it's been a long time since we've had one of Mr. Bickley's greeting cards. That was nice to get that again. It's not one of the classics, but I did like the rhyme of voyage and corsage. And of course, he's being very characteristic that he ends his sentiment with selfishness. And Mork is, of course, touched. We get Mindy reminiscing and Mork reacting to that. And we get another parquet margarine reference. When she does finally talk directly to him, she's brutally honest. And we can see that he's really in pain. And he has to literally break out of his shell. He says he wants to go to Yellowstone. He exchanges evangelistic yeses with Nelson, as they like to do this season. He clasps Glenda's hands and says, "Don't forget the tennis racket," so they'll have something to do in the car. She says that's the Mork she knows and vaguely understands. He does a sizzle on her shoulder. And he's done a sizzle in reference to her before, but I don't think it's necessarily a sexual thing. She goes to Nelson, who helps her on with her jacket, so more support of that ship. Then Mork clasps hands with Bickley. Bickley calls him my boy, and he's very avuncular in this episode. Mork says he's sorry about the clothes. Bickley says that's okay, it wasn't for him. He was going to cut it down for his dog. So I thought that was nice that he referred to Bicky. He pats Mork's shoulder and laughs. The guests say goodbye and exit, but before Mr. Bickley goes, he teases, "You two keep it quiet up here." Then he laughs. And I didn't know if he meant because he'd been pretending that Mork was gone and so it was quiet without him, or because it's a reference to how, particularly in his early episodes, he's always complaining about the noise, or if he's shipping Mork and Mindy and implying that they're going to have a noisy reunion.
See?
Oh. Oh, nice.
Oh.
Oh, that feels better than any security in the whole world.
Oh, I just want you to remember one thing, Mork. No matter how weird life gets, you just gotta keep on living. I mean, look at your alternative.
Yeah. This place is a nice place to visit, but I wouldn't want to live here without you.
No.
Oh, shh. In, no kissing. Say no to Mr. Mano. Oh, you're right, man. What the heck? Come on now.
This is so shippy and also a little bit heartbreaking. In retrospect, we've got them touching hands and holding hands and hugging and kissing. He says her hug feels better than any security in the whole world. She gives him a speech about how he's got to stay in life no matter how weird it gets. It's better than the alternative. And obviously, after Robin Williams' passing, that got to me more than it probably did 40-something years ago. He says that Earth is a nice place to visit, but he wouldn't live here without her. So they did have a really nice reunion, although not a noisy one. There's one last nighttime exterior of the house. Mork summons Orson. Mork is dancing as Bebo burbles. Mork calls Orson Butterball in the sky, like a butterball turkey. Orson asks what they're doing. Mork says they're celebrating life. They're tripping the life fantastic, instead of the light fantastic. Orson didn't think that life on Earth was all that pleasant. Mork says it's got its share of dangers, but many of them are blown out of proportion, not unlike Orson. Mork says many Earthlings can prove anything they want using statistics. For instance, newspapers talk about how many people died, but they never say how many people have lived. Mork says he can even prove that Orson isn't fat using the right statistics. Orson insists he isn't fat. Mork says, "Come on, sir, you're so huge, you have a climate all your own." Orson says, "Are you telling me that people should be totally oblivious to the dangers surrounding them?" Which is not what Mork was saying. Mork says, "Well, no, but if that's all they're looking for, that's all they're going to see." Unfortunately, most Earthlings spend their whole life worrying about their whole life. Mork will never forget this week's lesson that he learned from his Earthling friends. The greatest gift is the gift of life, and the greatest sin is to return it unopened. Until next week, he's got a lot of wrapping to do. And then he laughs. He signs off. This was an episode I didn't remember much about other than that glass case, and I don't think it's a reference to the famous mid-70s TV movie with John Travolta, The Boy in the Plastic Bubble, but kind of has that association. That, of course, had to do with protection for health reasons. Here, Mork is hunkering down in a way that he thinks is safe. Yes, obviously, this still has some resonance in our time and ways that people try and protect themselves. Sometimes are over overcautious, sometimes aren't cautious enough. How do you balance risk with safety? And what are you losing? And this is something obviously that hits differently since COVID. I have to say, as an extreme introvert, the idea of hiding away doesn't sound that terrible to me, but I also think that you do have to engage with life to some degree, whatever degree that is best for you. And obviously for somebody like Mork, he needs to be out there living life. I mean, for one thing, he is on the planet to observe it. He's not going to observe much in that glass box. He needs to be with his friends, especially Mindy, thinking about how life did get very weird and hard for Robin Williams. He did struggle. He did hang in there as long as he could. I rate each of these episodes on a 0 to 4 egg scale, which measures how well it delivers what I'm looking for in the series. I would like to give this a 3, but it did feel a little bit off. It did feel like things were missing, and not just edits, but just sort of not quite paying off the right way. So I'm going with 2 3/4 again. I didn't think everybody was used to their utmost, but at the same time, consider we had just about everybody but Fred. They did all get in there. They did do what they do. It was interesting to see them interact, in some cases in different combinations than we've seen before. The guest star was all right, but it wasn't one of those super memorable cameos. 33-year-old William Porter played Ernest. He worked from 78 to 99. He died in 2019. Didn't have too many credits on IMDb. I actually thought the most interesting thing about him was that for a while he was married to Miriam Flynn, who was a very recognizable character actress who got her start, oddly enough, on Gary Marshall's Who's Watching the Kids. She's still alive. There were a few chuckles here and there, and obviously some sentimental moments. We also got some shippy moments, and as I've said before, this so far is not a very shippy season. I also rate each of these episodes on a 0 to 4 heart scale, which measures how well it supports and promotes the romantic relationship of Mork and Mindy. And this was pretty much down the middle. It was a 2. Almost always with them, you can kind of take it platonically, but there seemed to be again and again this thing of they are like a couple. They are very physically affectionate with each other when they're not separated. We have them going on a vacation with a potential couple, and I don't think we ever find out if Nelson and Glenda get together. There might be 1 or 2 other episodes that kind of tease that ship. Anyway, I felt like there was more going on here than usual about the Mork and Mindy bond. I think this episode is worth watching. The way things are going, it may actually end up in my top 5 unless we get some better episodes down the pike. It's perfectly pleasant, not super memorable, has its moments. 2 3/4 eggs, 2 hearts. This is Paula Schaffner with episode 56. Alas, poor Mork, we knew him well. Nanu, Nanu, don't freeze your corns off.
Well, I heard 2 men talking on the radio in a crossfire kind of new reality show, uncovering the ways to plan the next big attack. Well, they were counting down the ways to stab the brother in the be right back after this. The unavoidable kiss with a minty fresh death breath is sure to outlast this catastrophe. Dance with me, cause if you got the poison, I've got the remedy. The remedy is the experience. This is a dangerous liaison. I says the comedy is that it's serious. This is a strange enough new play on words. I said the tragedy is how you're gonna spend the rest of your nights with the light on. So shine the light on all of your friends when it all amounts to nothing in the end. I won't worry my life away. Hey, I won't worry my life away.
Is it 3 or me? Nobody knows.
Now, more than ever, we can ask, is it live or is it Memorex?